look at is your quintessential barbarian sword faction, the Boii. Noble horse, very good melee cavalry, but expensive as well. So I've gone over those in the Averni video, but I'll just quickly sum it up. They have good melee attack, decent weapon damage, they have a good charge bonus. They're not shock cavalry, so they're not as good at charging enemy infantry, but they are very useful in stopping chariots and dealing with enemy cavalry. You also have your Oathsworn, of course, the quintessential sword tanking, killing, slaughtering unit, with a good melee attack, weapon damage that is very high base damage, so these guys will do very well against low armored units. On the charge, these guys are devastating, and they also have good armor, health and morale. They aren't disciplined, but they have the shield wall, so they can hold in melee for quite some time. Now the Celtic Warriors are cheap, good charge, decent melee attack, weapon damage for their price. So they can be very useful in flanking, rear charging, and also in straight up fights if you want to soak up some damage and do some damage as well. They can bring axe warriors, and these are identical to your mercenary axe warriors. They can be a bit difficult to use because of their low weapon damage. They do have high armor piercing, so in a flanking and rear attacking role, these guys can be very useful, but they will lose to many of the units they are designed to counter because they are poorer, cheaper units. The naked warriors, a bit weird, but very vulnerable to missiles, vulnerable to cavalry charges. They have a bonus of against the infantry of 15, which means that they will do 40 weapon damage and have 49 melee attack against infantry units. So if you manage to get these guys into the rear of units or flank them, they can be pretty devastating. A special unit unique to the Boii, the sword followers. Very good mid-tier sword infantry with good armor, health, good morale. They have the shield wall ability, good charge bonus, just overall good units that can tank it out against many of the other mid-tiers in the game and come out on top. For spears you have a pretty slim selection, but you have your cheap levy freemen, good against cavalry, not much else, not good when charged by cavalry. You have your spear warriors with their cavalry counter tactics, and they're very useful against enemy cavalry units. The veteran spears are also pretty useful because they have the shield screen, so they are more tanky in melee than your spear warriors. They also have more armor, they have decidedly more morale, and their melee defense is pretty damn good for their price. When you come to skirmishing, it's a bit slim. You have your Celtic bows, crappy bowmen. You have your Celtic slingers, crappy slingers, and you have your Celtic skirmishers, which the most redeeming feature of these guys is that they have a very good shield, blocking 40 to 50% of incoming missiles, and they are very useful if you're coming up against elephants and such. Light horse, standard horse that throws javelins, very cheap, low armor, dies to just about everything, but can be useful in chasing down skirmishers and rear charging. Heavy horse, good mid-tier horsemen, melee cavalry, so they have a pretty good charge bonus for being melee cavalry, good for rear charging, chasing down skirmishers, and good for charging infantry that isn't formed up. With the Boii you have a few different options. Let's first go over a fairly standard Boii sword rush here. This is going to be fairly elite heavy, and you don't have a lot to spend on your horses when you do it like this. But this is a setup that I quite like. It's not the most competitive setup, but it's decidedly a fun setup to play with, and you can play around with the number of Oathsworn and the number of sword followers. So taking out Oathsworn and going for a sword follower core is going to allow you to spend more on slightly better spears, for example, and it's going to allow you to bring some skirmishers as well, should you so wish. Or you can just go for the crappy levy freeman and then have more to spend on skirmishers. Then you have several options. So now we are approaching a more balanced type of Boii build. If you're going for just one Oathsworn, which can be risky, it's going to free up more funds for your heavy horse, and it's going to free up more funds for your skirmishers. So that's a pretty balanced type of Boii build, and I'm not even going to show a Boii skirmish build because, well, okay, I'll just do it for the hell of it. If you're going to go for a skirmish build, you might want to have more cavalry to get enemy skirmishers and cavalry. It's going to be really hard to use the Boii in this way. It can be done. You're going to go for a bit cheaper infantry. You might ditch your Oathsworn altogether. And then you can go for a bunch of Celtic Skirmishers, for example. So you bring 6 Celtic Skirmishers, and now you have funds to bring more Celtic Light Horse, but this build is quickly approaching what the fuck territory, because it's a very strange, it's a very strange Boii army that can work, but it's going to be difficult to make it work. So the main strength of the Boii will be in its sword followers, its Oathsworn, to a lesser extent its Axe Warriors, and the Celtic Warriors are also pretty decent melee infantry. So that's it for the Boii. I'll see you again on the battlefield.